I don't consider music to be my thing. I'm more of a linear thinker. I'm less of a creative type personality. I enjoy doing the work that I do at the insurance firm, but I also enjoy doing this. I love doing public speaking. And so when they invited me to speak about goal setting, I couldn't help but mix in some intention setting with it. And so on Tuesday, I had the absolute privilege of speaking to women enterprise-wide, that's corporate speak for all offices across the United States, speaking to women enterprise-wide about setting intentions and SMART goals and 1-minute goals. And you know, I got the most questions back about the intention setting. People were intensely curious about how that works and what they can do to fine-tune things. And I think it's kind of fun. It's one of my favorite things to talk about is intention setting, and we're going to continue that today with this talk, which is the intentional life. You guys get to come every Sunday and hear how to make this philosophy, these ideas work for you in your life. This is something that's wanted even in corporate America. I found that really interesting this week. So we started the first week of January with our white stone ceremony, which is step 1 of intention setting. That is the breathe and turn within part of intention setting. It's not about saying, okay, well, these people are happy. Obviously, they're happy because they're well partnered. Surely I just need to be well partnered in life. Or that person's happy and they have a lot of money. Therefore, I must simply get more money in order to find my happiness. This is how we generally lead our lives. This is how we generally look at what's going on around us. But there's another way. And that's the breathe and turn within. It's to become very, very mindful, to get out of your brain up here, get into your heart space, and really listen for your identity. What's desiring to be called forth as you? We're all individuals, and we all have something to share with the world. And if we're constantly modeling ourselves after other people, which can be a useful tool, but it's not the best way to live forth something genuine and authentic. So you breathe, you turn within, and you listen for the still small voice. And then our second Sunday started our series that we're in right now, which is the 1 brick at a time. And we talked about it doesn't matter what bubbled up for you. If it's yours, if it's authentically yours, start building it 1 brick at a time. If it's big, don't be afraid of it. If it's small, don't be ashamed of it. Just take the step that's right in front of you. That small thing might be something that's preparing you for the big thing. I've had lots of those moments in my life. Just take that step that's right in front of you and remember that you're only responsible for the what. You're only responsible for the what that's bubbling up through you, that's calling you forth into your highest good. The universe will take care of the how, because that's how it works. What you are seeking is seeking you also, is a repeated phrase by Ernest Holmes, and it's absolutely true. If you have a calling, something out there must be calling you. Our third talk was on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we honored the life and the teachings of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we talked about keeping the dream alive. We talked about continuing to allow that to come forth, keeping it in front of us. On White Stone Day, we wrote our intention on stone. We literally wrote it in stone, and we have it in front of us every day in some way. If you've taken up the invitation to do so, I find it to be a tremendous tool in living my life, just to keep it in front of me. But it doesn't always have to work that way, and I'll tell you a little more about that later. But today we're talking about that part that I told you not to worry about. Because I am less of a creative type and more of a linear thinker type, I want to know the underpinnings. I want to know what's going on in the background. I want to remind you, it's been about 4 years since I've done the bowl demonstration with you guys. And so it's also been about 4 years since I told you about Joanne Wood's research. Joanne Wood is a Canadian researcher, and she became interested in all of the people around her talking about their affirmations and how fantastic their affirmations are. We're big on affirmations. Look at our new affirmation up here on the wall. Together we thrive. Together we thrive. So she wanted to know, were affirmations real? Did they work? She's a scientific mind, so she decided to do a scientific experiment. Now, if she had talked to me first, I could have saved her a lot of time and told her how that experiment was going to work out. Because I've been playing with affirmations and intentions and prayer work and meditation work for a very long time. But in short, what happened was she brought people in and she interviewed them. In their intake interview, she had them pick a number between 1 and 10, as in, how lovable do you feel? Or how lovable do you think you are? It was something along those lines. And so people who chose a number that was less than 5 on their exit interview, so the experiment was that they would say the affirmation, I am lovable, I am lovable, I am lovable. People who had a number less than 5, who said the affirmation, came out on their exit interview and gave themselves an even lower score than they had before. And affirmations don't always work. And would. But people who were above a 5, who said, I am lovable, I am lovable, I am lovable, their scores tended to be higher on their exit interview. So what I'm positing to you folks is that affirmations always work for everyone in exactly the same way all the time. All the time. That's where we come to our bowl of water. There's always somebody who knows the law of flotation. Who today? Who knows the law of flotation? Hit it, Alyssa. Yes, anything will float. If it weighs less than the water it displaces, exactly, anything will float. If it weighs less than the water it displaces. Now, back in the day, right, people were kind of fumbling around with shipbuilding and how do you make something float so you can go across the water, and they chose materials that they knew float, like wood. And they throw wood in the creek and it floats in the creek, therefore wood floats, therefore we will make our boats from wood. And what we know now through experimenting and through naming that, right, no one just decided that's how it works. That law is a description of how things work. So now that they understand that anything will float so long as it weighs less than the water it displaces, if you make a boat or a ship out of metal, you can get that son of a gun to float as long as it weighs less than the water that it's displacing. So we've all been playing with the law of flotation our entire lives, right? When we got in that bathtub as a kid, we loved to play with our little toys and fill them with water and dump water. And, some of them would go to the bottom and you couldn't see them through the bubbles, but you pretty much knew which toys those were. And so I'm going to ask you guys, does this bath toy, does it sink or float? Float, float. All right, float, little kitty, float. So the kitty floats. Look at that. You guys were able to guess what it was going to do without even trying it out first. Okay? What about my little friendship stone here that my BFF gave me? Sink or float? Whoa. Fall down and bounce. Sink. All right, let's give it a shot. Absolutely. Look at that. You guys are so smart. You can predict what's going to happen. How about, what about this match? Float. Float. I think it'll float too. Yes. All right. So here's a questionable one for me. I was looking for little doodads and I found this key. And this key has a plastic top, and I know sometimes things made with plastic will float, but it's got a metal thing here. So you want to hold that and give it a guess. What do you think? Sink or float? You think it's going to sink. What about you? Okay. So Bill thinks it'll sink. Sam thinks it'll float. I don't know. I've never dropped this key in water. It's kind of iffy to me. So let's find out what's going to happen with it. It sunk. It sunk. All right. So that was a decent experiment. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen with that. So let's see. We're really working on the drive to thrive here at Unity of Tacoma. So I keep this in front of me. Little heart token that says, I am ready to receive. Made out of metal. Ships are made out of metal. Ships float, but sink or float? Sink. Bam, down it goes. And then my little meditation stone. I used this for this demonstration once, and it lost its smoothness. And today, Scott Young offered to make it smooth for me again. I'm so excited. So this will be probably the last time it gets used in this demonstration. But what do you think? My little wooden sinker float. It's wood, solid wood. Float. Oh, we got some, no, we don't know. Whoa, okay. So it floats. Very cool. So just because someone said it would sink, because someone over here guessed that it might sink, did it sink? No. So you couldn't brain power that down to the bottom of the bowl, right? What did I miss? Jesse, are you mocking me? Do it. Make it sink. Power of the mind. Jessica, let's go. If anyone could do it, Jessica could do it. But we have a law, right? And it's not because I decided that this is how it's going to be. It's not like a law about how fast you can go on the streets. It's a law that's a description of how things actually work. I have some goals for Unity of Tacoma during my time here. So I'm acting as your interim minister. My technical title that has come down from Unity Worldwide Ministries is Ministry Coordinator, but I'm acting in the capacity of your interim ministry. And I really would like to leave this group with everyone able to not only recite the 5 basic unity principles. I know you all understand the 5 basic unity principles. That's a no-brainer. However, I oftentimes will ask, because we're working with number 3, someone tell me, what is the 3rd basic unity principle? God is good, good in everyone. So we're going to get there. And a thought can change your water into wine. So the 3rd basic unity principle, by the way, homework, okay, here are the 5 basic unity principles. Let's get those going around the room. Y'all need them. Put them in your wallet. Read them from time to time. Is what we call in the Centers for Spiritual Living, which is where my license is held. It's what we call co-creation, or the creative process. It's not for 52 pickup. The creative process. And so one of my other goals for this group is for everyone in this group to not only understand the creative process, because I've talked to so many of you in depth, you're all very intelligent, and you've all been many of you have been in this philosophy for longer than I have. You have an absolute understanding of what the creative or co-creative process is. But I've discovered that you're not always able to share it, even with someone who already understands it. And so that's one of my other goals, is to make sure that you're able to discuss the 5 basic unity principles and the creative process. And the reason why is because when you're encountering people out there, we've decided as a group that we are going to make a go of this organization. We've decided as a group that we are individually going to thrive, and we've decided as a group that we're going to bring other people in who are interested in the same things, correct? So how can you bring other people in if you can't even tell them what you're learning, believing, doing? So we're working on the 3rd, which is the creative process. So in short, the creative process works like this. And you can substitute your own word for God. I use God, Spirit, universe, life. I use those words interchangeably. It doesn't matter to me what your word is for that something greater that's out there. Even if your word for it is psychology or sociology, I'm totally fine with that, because what did we just see? We just saw that the law of flotation works exactly the same for everyone, no matter what they believe or think or wonder. And the same is true about the law of creation or the law of co-creation. It doesn't matter what you think, believe, or do. It doesn't matter what your worldview is. It doesn't matter if you're an evangelical Christian. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist. This works the same way for everyone, but we may have a different way of discussing it. So I'm talking about it from a new thought perspective, which is what Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living are under the umbrella of. And so I'm talking about God. Because to me, God is real, God is personal. But we're going to talk about an impersonal aspect of the nature of God. So just as with Christianity believing that God is triune in nature, so do we. So Christianity would name those triune parts the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, where we would name those triune parts some pretty old-fashioned words, but they are spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, soul, and body. And the word soul is often substituted with the word law. And it's this kind of law. It's the kind of law that describes how something works. And so when you are looking at the third unity principle and how we co-create with the world, you're looking at that spiritual law, which is vastly complex. Books and books and books have been written about it. Hundreds of churches across the country preach about it every Sunday, including ours. You can't even imagine how many ministers are standing where I am right now teaching this exact same thing, and that's how complex it can be too. So it's about finding a way to anchor it in with you in a way that you understand and you can talk about. So if someone read the third principle off their card. Who's got it? We are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. All right. We are co-creators with God, creating our reality with thoughts held in mind. If that were 100% true, that's one way to describe it. If that were the whole way to describe it, Joanne Wood's experiment would have shown that everybody increased their number. So there's something else that's going on when it comes to the thoughts held in mind. So the thoughts held in mind is the doorway through which you get to what's actually going on beneath the surface. And it's the same thing as when you create a resume, okay, to get a job. Woohoo, you have a resume. You're never going to get a job if you don't take the next step. Get it out there to employers and take the next step and accept an interview and take the next step and bargain and negotiate a contract, right? So the thoughts held in mind is just the doorway, and that's what Dr. Wood missed in her experiment, because she was only going by what she had been told or what she was wondering about, which was, can you say these words and affect your experience of life? And that's not the entirety of it. When you have an intention, one of the things that I would coach you on if you came to me with your intention is to get some feeling words, because it's not an incantation. It's not a magic spell. There's no Expelliarmus and then you affect what's around you, right? That's fantasy. But what's real is what you believe outpictures in your life. What you think, really think, outpictures in your life. And listening to Christine S. this morning, and she was trying to get someone to turn pages for her, I was reminded of when I used to turn pages for my mom. And she told me a story once when she was training me as a page turner, which is a very simple job, but there are a few things to know. And she told me a story about someone who was in the middle of, playing something very, very big. It was very public. It was very important. There was a lot of money on the line. And the page turner kept reaching for the bottom, covering the notes that were necessary to finish the page, and turning it. And so the pianist kept saying, from the top, from the top. And the page turner misunderstood and went all the way to the beginning of the song, because from the top means start from the beginning of the song. So words have meaning, but they don't always mean the same thing, and they meant something different to the page turner than they did to the pianist. So it's important that you find the words that are meaningful for you. I remember when my mother was conducting the Beth Shalom choir in Seattle, and I was watching her, and she had all of her choir up here, with a note, and she's like, hold it, hold it. Well, they heard, hold it, and they stopped. And what she meant was, hold that note, hold it, keep it going. I mean, same words, different understanding. So yeah, words are important, but they aren't the be-all, end-all. Really, the be-all, end-all is what's here. And what's here is what is coming from your real beliefs, your actual beliefs. So why did some people score lower on Joanne Wood's experiment? Because when you come in not thinking you're lovable and someone tells you to lie and say, I'm lovable, I'm lovable, I'm lovable. What they're thinking is, this is ridiculous. This isn't going to work. Nothing like this ever works. I'm an absolute fraud. And so now they've come out feeling like they've committed fraud, feeling like they're a liar. Naturally, they felt less lovable. Of course they felt less lovable. Who wouldn't? Whereas someone who went in, who had some good self-confidence and self-regard, who went in and said, all right, I know, I'm a decent person. I'm lovable, I'm lovable, I'm lovable. Ooh, that felt good. Yeah, I guess I'm lovable. Might score a little bit higher. But that higher score was based off of an understanding within themselves. So they took themselves where they were and they ratcheted it up just a little bit, right? When you set an intention, oftentimes the first thing happens is everything falls apart. Everything falls apart. My entire talk next week is about when everything falls apart and what to do with it. One of the people in my company asked a question and said, so you said affirmations work, but you're saying that Joanne Wood's research showed that sometimes they don't. She says, I'm really confused. I said, but I also said that it works the same all the time for everyone. So what that meant is, if someone did not believe that they were lovable and they scored lower, there's a next step for them. That person may have experienced an adverse childhood event. A lot of people who don't feel lovable have experienced adverse childhood events. So that affirmation, I am lovable, I am lovable, I am lovable, may have brought to the surface a need for psychotherapy of some kind. In which case it did work, because it brought up exactly what that person needed to move into the experience that they were claiming. Now I don't have to give next week's talk, that's it. It's really important to know your mind, what's really going on in your mind. Your words are important. I don't think I've told you the story of the notebook. When I first started learning about affirmations and intentions, and I mean, my life was in absolute chaos. It was there was no way I could just pick one thing to, work on throughout the year. And being the kind of person I am, I did an experiment very similar to what Joanne Wood did. She wanted proof about it, and I just bought a spiral-bound notebook that had maybe 40 pages in it. And at the top of each page, I wrote an individual intention. There were more intentions than affirmations. There were specific things that I wanted to see emerge in my life. But because my life was in so much chaos, I moved and moved and moved again. And on the third move, I found that notebook. When I found that notebook, I looked at the first page like, oh my gosh, it's already managed. The second page, that one's done too. Like all the way through this notebook, and everything, even though I hadn't looked at it since then, everything was managed. Words do have power. Words do have power. When I was teaching them to do 1-minute goals, I was thinking of my own 1-minute goals. 1-minute goals are generally task-based. It's a very corporate thing. It comes out of the 1-minute manager. And I have my 1-minute goals. I actually just keep everything in my prayer journal. And I put a little paper clip next to them. And that reminds me just to go to that page and read them for my 1 minute each morning. Well, I had one that I was working on, but I'd gotten so busy and off track I hadn't read it in a while. I went back to it on Friday and done. Time to work on something else. I've managed it. So spoken affirmations, it's important to speak it out loud. Written affirmations, it's important just to put words to it. But remember, it's not the words, it's the felt response that you have. It's what you really, truly, actually believe. And the farther off you are from that, the more likely you are to have some intervening things, because again, it's not a magic spell. So what are you actually believing? I've been working with them so long, I know if my affirmation's going to sink or float. I absolutely know what's coming when I make my affirmation, which is why for 3 years in a row, and I couldn't find my ones prior to these stones, health came up for me. I'm overweight. I've got some GI issues. There's some neurological things going on. There's plenty of things that I could do to embrace health. But every time I did, I'm like, oh, my life is going to fall apart if I do this affirmation right now. And it wasn't until last year that I finally claimed it, and I'm very excited about what's happening for me. It took me a year of my affirmation, of my intention, and of a prayer circle here at Unity of Tacoma. We all met once a month and prayed together for me to get to a point where things started to change, because it first started with my mindset, first started with what I believed about myself. And it was a process to change my idea about who I am and to remember what is the highest truth of myself in order for that to emerge. So just to recap, this is the third Unity principle. It's called co-creation in Unity, and it's about using this idea of the universe supporting you in what you're doing in order for your intention or your affirmation to come through. I had an intention to heal my relationship with my mother. And she and I weren't even on speaking terms. But the day I got really clear about it, she called me. I went to her little cottage, and my mother's so cute. She's truly a Nana with a cottage in the woods. So I went to Nana with her cottage in the woods. Say, hey, what's up? You sounded upset. She's like, I really am upset. I just can't be quiet about this any longer. And she picked a fight with me. But I was so clear about who I was and standing in a place of love that we actually were able to air what was going on for us and to create something new. I didn't call her. She called me. There was something beyond what I was doing here. There was something that was happening out here that did feel magical, that made her ready to hear me too. And that is co-creation. That's the part of co-creation. Yes, we create our lives through the thoughts held in mind, but we're creating it with with life, the universe. I mean, a psychologist could have trained me to respond to my mother that night the way I responded, but I had no training. I just had a new way of being me. And so I was able to approach her with love. And because I was different, her responses were different, and we kind of got out of that loop of arguing, I don't agree with you, I don't agree with you, I don't agree with you, you're wrong, blah, 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 this is terrible, we're, never going to get along. And break out of that cycle and do something new. But the way it happened for me did seem magical. It's like I put something greater than I could accomplish on my own out into the universe, and the universe responded with everything I needed, including a new mindset, in order to heal the relationship with my mother. Third basic Unity principle is co-creation. The other thing I want you guys to have when I move on, I want you to be able to just say it. Consciousness is cause. Consciousness is cause. I was really embarrassed when my senior minister in the Seattle church had a whole bunch of us in the class, and she's like, all right, we got to get down to brass tacks. I want you guys to tell me exactly what we're doing here. What is the very fundamental? Because we were like all out here in this esoteric, we're all so well trained and experienced. We've got all these bright, lovely, poetic answers. She's like, no, brass tacks. No one said anything. There were, I think, 60 of us. No one said anything. And I finally ventured, God is good? How basic can you get? God is good? She's like, no, you guys, come on. Consciousness is cause. And I was like, derp, yes, that is actually the fundamental, the basics of what we teach. Consciousness is cause. What is in your consciousness is what you're going to experience out here. Thoughts held in mind create your reality. It's the same between Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity of Tacoma. The question is, do you really know what you're thinking? When you say from the top, do you really know what you're saying? Do you have a felt sense of what that is? How clear can you be? Because here's something else. Fuzzy thinking equals fuzzy results. When someone comes in for a practitioner session with me, which is a prayer counseling coaching situation, a lot of times there's a feeling of being stuck. It's because there's fuzzy thinking. They don't even really know what they want. They just know they want it to be better. So you get really clear. All right, I've brought you guys through prayer, intention setting, dreaming big, and knowing that you're not in it alone. It's a friendly universe that's supporting you. Next Sunday, the other shoe drops with mountains and molehills and the things that get in the way of us reaching our higher good. I can't wait to talk to you about that, but for now, why don't we go into meditation? This has been a lot.